Hey out there, legal warriors. In this video, I'm going to cover a very common question. Is your life ruined if you are dealing with a criminal charge? There's three factors that I consider in answering that question. If you're interested in this area of the law, stay tuned. This is the video for you. My name is Attorney Lance Fryrear. I'm a defense attorney in Linwood, Washington. My law firm's been defending people charged with crimes all throughout Washington State for more than 25 years, and I'm putting out these videos to help educate the public. So if you find this useful, please like and please subscribe. More people get to see it. More people get the help they need. Now, as always, I'm just going to jump right into it. Is your life ruined if you are charged with a crime? And most of the time, what does our brain tell us? Yes, our life is over, right? Our life is over. My life is ruined. There's no end in sight. There's no point of going on. And in reality, from helping 25 years worth of clients, tens of thousands of people, I can think of very few cases where somebody's life was ruined due to a criminal charge. So what are the three factors that we have to think about whether or not our life is ruined due to a criminal charge? I think number one is employment. What's going to happen with our ability to support ourselves. That also can include housing, things like that. Number two is how we think about ourselves, right? How the stress of dealing with this and now being marked as a criminal or something like that can affect all our future relationships and decisions. And third, how do our friends and family react to us if they understand that we've been charged with the crime? And each one of these usually is going to turn out much better than you think. So that first factor is, what's going to happen to my employment? Will I still have a job? Will I be able to keep my housing, stuff like that? And from helping so many people, what I can tell you about is it's never going to be invisible, but usually all that employers care about or housing or stuff like that is convictions. They don't care about the fact that you're actually charged with a crime. And this is a term that I hear misused often. People always say, and usually possibly someone not from this country originally, but we do represent a lot of people from all over the world, they'll say, but what if I'm charged with the crime? What if I'm charged? And they sort of mean conviction, okay? So if someone's accused of a crime, that's being charged with a crime. But before we have that negative outcome, what that would be called is a conviction. So usually employers, if they care about anything, they care about convictions, not charges. And sometimes you're going to get an employment questionnaire that says something like, have you ever been arrested for a crime? And we always say answer that. If you're arrested and physically put in jail, maybe that's yes for an arrest, but if you're just contacted by police, that's probably no for an arrest. But usually those employment questionnaires say, have you been convicted of a crime? And hopefully, if the case turns out really great, you're not going to be convicted of a crime in your particular case. Even if you are convicted, usually by the time an employer gets to a background check, they're already at a pass-fail, right? They want to hire you if they get to a background check. And usually only certain types of things may disqualify you from certain types of jobs. And from dealing with tens of thousands of clients in real life, it's very rare that we find out that someone's denied a job based upon a criminal charge, especially in cases that we handle. So your life probably isn't ruined in that situation. We also get another question: should I tell my current employer? Well, our rule of thumb is typically don't tell the employers what we typically think unless you're required to tell the employer due to some type of contract, some type of government agency, some type of union thing. But most of the time, the other question we get is, will my employer find out? Well, the employer is usually only going to find out if you tell them, right? Unless they have some background check that they do every so often, they're probably not going to find out that you got arrested or accused of a crime unless you're a no-call, no-show for work. We've covered this in other videos, right? If your loved one gets arrested or something, and they might be in jail through Monday, think about what you can tell an employer besides they're in jail to try to make sure that it doesn't cost them their job. Same way with apartments, things like that. Just allegations typically won't keep you from getting an apartment. Certain criminal convictions might, but again, from tens of thousands of clients, it's very rare we see such an outcome. So I can confidently say that in most cases, if you're accused of a crime, you're still going to be able to find work, although every case is individual. What can happen is people start not getting jobs and they start to blame it on the criminal charge, and really sometimes it's just hard to get a job. Number two factor that how it might ruin our life is how we think about ourselves, right? Usually if someone's accused of a crime, it's usually because they were already having sort of bad thoughts about themselves, right? People who go out there and steal things usually don't understand why. They're anxious, they're depressed. Same way with DUIs, right? There's never an excuse, but there can be explanations. Sometimes people drink too much, right? When they're anxious, upset, something bad happens, someone dies in their family, or they just think negatively about themselves. Same way with domestic cases, right? Strife at home, strife in the marriage with boyfriends and girlfriends. Usually we're feeling really terrible about ourselves when these things happen. So the dangerous part of being charged with a crime is now that defectiveness that we feel, that fear that we feel, that anxiety that we feel can be multiplied, right? It could be multiplied. And that's why it's really important to try to look at what your support system looks like to get you through this, because your brain is saying things like your life is over, your life is ruined, there's nothing that can be done, I'm a terrible person, I'm a criminal, I'm a thief, whatever. And none of that's true, right? Anybody can get charged with a crime. And, I haven't run into a bad person yet that I've represented. And all these good people out there, and you may be one of them watching, if you're accused of a crime, there's nothing wrong with you because you're accused of a crime. You're not defective because you're accused of a crime. You're just a person, and our brain works in a certain way that often has us act out when we don't otherwise know how to deal with the bodily or emotional feelings we're having, because they don't teach us about this in school. So look at your support system. Sometimes I get a lot of silence on the phone when I say, hey, do you live alone or with other people? And they think, why is he asking that? Well, I want to see who is in your day-to-day life, and do they know about what's going on, and what do they sound like, right? Most of the time they sound like, hey, we're going to support you, I'm sorry this happened, and we want to reject that if we're accused of a crime, right? There's something wrong with this. We don't want to put it on you, loved one, father, mother, partner. But remember, we don't get to choose the best outcomes for people, right? They should get to decide if they want to support us. Don't deny them the opportunity to support you by keeping it all to yourself. I'm also going to ask, do you have any pets, right? Pets always love us. Well, maybe cats don't, but dogs do, right? The old joke, you lock your brother and your dog in the trunk for 6 hours. When you open the trunk, which one's happy to see you, right? Always the dog. And so to the person accused of a crime, this is absolutely feeling of life or death. To the system, it's just another case, right? And if you're in court, sometimes people go to court and everyone's going to look at me in court. No one's looking at you. They're all worried about themselves, right? They're not worried about you. They're worried about their case. But we carry all this guilt, all this remorse, all this negative self-thought into these situations. And when we're accused of a crime, it can get much worse. So it's really important that you do things to get around that. Rely on your loved ones. Rely on your attorney, right? Get out in the real world. Don't spin in your head about what's going to happen, right? The only happiness is in the present, right? The past is remorse and guilt. The future is anxiety and worry. What can you eat today? If you can control what you eat today, everything's just fine. So no, your life isn't going to be ruined because you're charged with a crime. How do I know that? I got tens of thousands of examples that I can't give you, but I know about from helping so many people. And so finally, the third thing where people worry about their life being ruined is, what are others going to think of us, right? What are my kids going to think of me? What are my friends going to think of me? My partner, right? I'm a pillar of the community, right? And remember, those are normal feelings to be worried about that, because pretty much how us humans work is based upon status, right? We all work on status, right? People have a fancy watch because it shows status. The attorney wears a suit because it gives them status. And someone's status you can be worried about your status being diminished if others think badly about you because you're accused of a crime. Well, number one, how do they even know, right? Most people are never going to know that you got accused of a crime. They're not going to come stamp your head with a C that says criminal or anything like that. And secondarily, if you have good friends, they're probably going to support you, and you'd be surprised they may have been through something like this themselves, right? It's amazing how many times someone might call our office and say 2 or 3 of their friends referred them to us because they used us too, right? And they're just fine. And so remember, people want to forgive, people want to support, people like to reach out to others if they're good people when they're down and lift them up. If someone's kicking you when you're down and they're trying to use it against you, that's a good sign that that's it's maybe good you learn that about them so you can exit them from your life. Because from what I've seen, if something bad happens to me, and a lot of bad has happened this year in my personal life, I won't go into it here, but 2025 can go away. It's been a nightmare. But the amount of support I've gotten from people at the office, right, my friends, clients even, people want to help others in their time of need, and I wouldn't be too worried about what someone's going to think about you, especially because you're going to overcome this and it's going to turn out just fine. So is your life ruined because you're charged with a crime? Heck no. Hell no, if YouTube will let me say that. We'll see if it stays in. It's not, because we just won't let it, and any good attorney won't let it, and you won't let it yourself. There's lots of things you can look at. I've got, some book reviews on this channel. You can look at the 4 agreements, or you can look at The Obstacle is the Way about Stoicism. There's lots of things you can do, but those are things that I use to help me get through the stress of helping so many people with how they feel about when they're accused of a crime. So your feelings are normal, but the feelings don't typically represent how it really works in reality. But our reality is the own prison of our brain, so let's do what we can to get out of it and move on and get the best results we can, not only in the case, but in your life in the future. So I hope you found that useful. If so, please like and please subscribe. More people get to see it. More people get the help they need. And more importantly, if you had a criminal matter in Washington State, feel free to reach out to our firm. If we get on board, we'll listen to what happened, we'll identify a way forward, and we will be there for you. Thank you.